Welcome. These will be my thoughts on Wonder Man Season 1, Episode 8, Yucca Valley. The episode is rated TV-14, so with this video there will be spoilers for these 8 episodes and possibly the MCU in general leading up to and including the show. Oh, my autofocus fixed itself. I might have been moving too much. And another episode that I absolutely loved, so that makes all the episodes of this show, and still most of the MCU. Yeah, I wanted to start by noting I'm not sure I've fully given credit to the show for the themes of redemption, betrayal. Like, this is all we're getting of the Wonder Man miniseries, these 8 episodes. Like, it's possible that these characters will appear later, but I'm not sure we're necessarily ever going to see more. Like, I guess if enough people wanted, maybe, but we might never see more of the Wonder Man movie that they were making within the show. So it really is just, this one scene that we, first they run lines, then we see them performing the scene in the audition, the callback, and in this episode we see the final scene. And yeah, it is there's already so much meta in this because it's Hollywood making a thing about Hollywood, but it's also, Trevor did betray, and by the end, Simon did forgive him, and Hollywood, show business in general can be very treacherous. There is a lot of betrayal. So yeah, very nicely done on that. I really appreciate the decision to censor so much on that. And yeah, let's keep the rest of this more or less chronological. So we get our final, opening flashback, and I gotta admit, they really worked for me. I've made some jokes, but I do think it works really well, and I love that of the 8, 3 of them are to the day that Simon watched Wonder Man in theaters with his dad. First, we just saw the watching. I think that might even have been the season opener, come to think of it. And, several episodes later, we saw, oh, that was actually, it was like a school day. And his father realized he needed to, he didn't want to go back to school because he was being bullied. And then in this one, we see, now we understand better why the glasses were so important. His father wanted a pair when he saw the film as a kid, just... And then in this episode, he actually does... They found them, they found those shades, and he got... Yeah. And I think that might just about cover... Yeah, because... Right. So the reason we keep seeing that, 3 out of 8 flashbacks are to that, that's almost half. That is, because it was so significant for him. And I do really love, by the end of this episode, I don't know if Simon is going to continue acting, because, the big thing he wanted was to prove himself as talented, and now he has. He wanted to play Wonder Man for his father, and he has, so it's... They did a really great job. Like, hypothetically, I'm aware in the comics there is at least some where he's sort of an, maybe not even anti-hero, but kind of villain. You could do that if you really wanted to after this, hypothetically. Okay, so I know some people really hate when you talk about what the potential future is. I will also talk about what else I think this does really well, but I do really appreciate, Yahya Abdul-Mateen II has played villains, and done an amazing job. So, yeah, I wouldn't rule out, and certainly it would be deeply compelling. The MCU still doesn't always have the best villains, and on the other hand, hypothetically, so the DOTC know about his powers, but they don't necessarily have proof. That's another thing. Like, are they going to be able to prove that that was Simon? If they talk to Chuck, like, if they compel him, if they, like, under oath kind of thing, maybe he will say, because he knew that was Simon. He just didn't know Simon had powers. So hypothetically, yeah, you could have a story where Simon is being, hunted. But yeah, you could also have him, maybe he joins one of the two Avengers teams or something, and that's how this conflict is resolved. Once the DODC know, then it wouldn't be hugely difficult for heroes with a connection to the U.S. government to find out. And there is in this very episode they say Simon Williams could be a threat or an asset. If, like, I could definitely see Sam Wilson convincing, no, I'm sure that Simon can, he'll join the team, and he'll, it could be a way to atone, because, like, he hasn't really, like, hurt anyone physically. I mean, other than the, in self-defense. But yeah, America, capitalism, you could definitely see they'd be like, oh, well, you got to work off the the property damage you caused or something. But yeah, they could easily do a story like that. And yes, so the yeah, genuinely really, really clever. That so yeah, Simon went home after, and he feels he's essentially resigned. Like, he went home. Like, he knows that there's some chance. He's basically just resigned. He's to the situation. He's sitting there waiting for the DODC to come and arrest him. He says as much to Trev. Trevor calls, and he says, I figured it out. And I really love that moment of, like, like, when Simon says, I'm really happy for you. It genuinely, because, like, I don't know, on some level, he kind of, he does feel like this was his mistake, which, again, I do really feel like, again, is Black History Month. That is something that I have heard a number of people of color, including Black people sometimes, especially Black people, talk about how they would blame themselves for the actions of others. And, like, at the end of the day, mistake, you mean trying to get a job that legally you're not allowed to, like, okay, he lied, but it's not like he did something wrong. He just kept hidden something that is just part of him, and that's also, it also works well as, LGBTQ plus, metaphor, allegory kind of thing. And yeah, I mean, this whole situation is, like, Trevor really screwed up, and I really appreciate, yeah, he finally admits, he's like, you know what, I've been running from this for years, like, for 13 years, he's been pretending like, oh, Mandarin's just a role, and it's really nicely done. I appreciate they definitely didn't plan this whole thing that far back, but, in, so I did rewatch the one shot. I can never remember. I think it's called All Hail the King. And that one does. There it's almost like a joke. Like, he says, I can't just, I have to get into character. I can't just do the voice. Okay, fine. And then he does the voice because people want him to do the voice. And then, he doesn't really do that role, but he does other acting in Shang-Chi, the solo movie. And then in this, there's the part where someone quotes the Mandarin and imitates the voice back to him, and he seems slightly offended by it, so yeah, he hasn't really taken responsibility for what he did there. And in this episode, he acknowledges he's never really, owned up to his mistakes in general. And yeah, like, that is something that's, again, it's not only show business, but there is a problem within show business of people making mistakes and getting away with it because they're making the right people a lot of money. And yeah, I really appreciated the handling of that entire and Sir Ben Kingsley. Holy crap. He's just so freaking good. Like always. I don't think I've ever seen him in anything where I was like, ugh, I didn't really he was just okay, I guess. Like even stuff that see I can never remember on my research resort to check right now. Isn't that him in the Prince of Persia movie? I mean, even that he was good in, even though that's not I've there's a lot of movies I've watched more than once. I'm not sure I'm ever going to watch that movie a second time. But yeah, he was good. I'm pretty sure that was him, and Shutter Island, I think, didn't he also appear in that? Just he's always so freaking good, and just yeah, I really admire. Like I'm so happy that he got to add so much depth to the character. And that was actually something that did start in the one shot, and then they expanded, a little bit, and then they expanded some in the Shang-Chi movie, but then here they really don't. It's the one shot where his mom is brought up for the first time, and we see, oh, he has been making mistakes for some years now, and helps explain, in Iron Man 3, it's almost like a joke, like, oh, he was on drugs, so they hired him by saying they'd give him more drugs, and now he is, the face of this terrorist organization, and yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it was nicely done the way that it goes from, first the news says, well, we don't know anything about a suspect yet. I mean, Kash Patel said something, but he does not seem to have any clue what to do. Deeply unqualified for the position. But then, after Trevor hangs up, then, Simon turns back on, and yeah, he took credit, which is a fun kind of playing with, because, like, that's the thing. In Iron Man 3, the explosions that the Mandarin took credit for were accidents. They were superpowers, not working the way they were intended, the extremists. So yeah, like this, he's come full circle almost. He's embracing the thing that he's been running from and pretending was not him. And I appreciate, he didn't believe in the Mandarin, and he kind of told himself that it wasn't, the people weren't getting hurt. But, by now he has realized, yeah, like it was, and it's difficult. It's difficult for all of us to admit our mistakes, our faults. And I think that, but yeah, and the way that they really nailed it. If you haven't watched Iron Man 3 recently, I know it's not everybody loves it like I do, but yeah, they really did imitate those, those videos really, really well. And yeah, he actually did do research for once, That was another thing he joked about in the one shot, and it was kind of nice to see that the Shimoy buddies are friends again. They're watching the video together and like, it's so cool. It's actually the Mandarin. Yeah. And the thing about how, yeah, they just wanted to arrest someone. Like, okay, it's not Simon, at least not for now, but they have a quota. They have prisons to fill. And I think that brings us to let's see. Yeah, and so they get him, and he's in the full garb still. That it's really just the facial hair that's different. Other than that, and he's doing the voice, and he claims, the Trevor was the act. I was always the Mandarin, which, like, Cleary isn't really buying it, but there's only so much he can do. And, the because it's one of those things, like, hypothetically, if he said, okay, we're also going to arrest Simon, someone's going to be like, you're arresting Simon for the same thing you arrested Trevor for, but you said that Trevor, there was only one person who did that. So are we now going to release Trevor and, like, admit that we made a mistake? That's not very nice of us. And I guess this is a decent time to recommend watching the We Gon' Be Alright video on bootlickers. Really, really solid stuff. Anyway, let's see. I guess that does pretty much. Yeah, and so, someone does come to knock on Simon's door, but it's Terrell. And he, he never misses a day of shooting, so we're going to bring you in. And I really appreciated that we don't see the costume until when he is indeed on set, and taking off the thing to cover so the paparazzi don't get, I forget, I think they do still do it for at least some of these movies. I know they did it on X-Men 1, the Fox movie, where that was the very first time that we saw Mystique in one of those movies, that continuity at least, and they made sure to hide her when she was in full makeup, which unfortunately she said Rebecca Romaine, let's see, I think she only goes by Rebecca Romaine now. She unfortunately said that was a very isolating experience, so that really sucks. And I like that he gets one more weird directing advice for, so, I mean, you were betrayed by your friend, just like your character. Also, last night you dreamt that your mom was cooking a hedgehog. I want to see where you take that. I mean, I guess with something quite that random, he feels confident that Simon is not just going to do a scene from Pretty Woman. And, yeah. Joey Pants took over, which, like, yeah, the thing he did last time we saw him, the last thing we saw him do before this episode on the show, was call his agent and say, why haven't I heard about Wonder Man? So yeah, as soon as Trevor was out, of course he was someone that they brought in. And I like that there at the end, Simon doesn't tell him, he's it's not important. And he's thinking, like, De Niro? Banderas? Yes, I'm sure you get mistaken for Antonio Banderas all the time, Trevor. That's And I guess that does bring us to, yeah, I love the cut that we go from him acting, and he is indeed delivering really, really well. And I also appreciate, like, I'm not bored with the line, even though we've now heard it in several different contexts, as mentioned earlier. But the entire exchange about the betrayal. And yeah, we cut to the finished film, and they're watching it in the theater, and it was genuinely sweet that Eric is tearing up over it. And of course, he can't quite, he's like kind of trying to hide it, like, oh, I got something in my eye. But then afterwards, he does hug Simon and say he's proud, and he just says, don't forget about us though, which, yeah, there, I don't think Simon will, but he does sometimes struggle to remember the regular people, and yeah, and it's a very older brother thing to say, keeping him on his toes kind of thing. And I like their mother saying, I can't believe Barnaby betrayed you like that. And I guess that does bring us to, yeah, and everybody loves him. People are, cosplayers showed up and shout Wonder Man, and and Janelle points out, hey, you were right. Now you have your own, you can pick anything you want. So what's next? And then it cuts, and we see, and for a few minutes we don't quite know what he's doing or why, but I thought that absolutely worked. And I'll talk some more about it, but I did also briefly want to note. So Joey is a very different friend to, or if you want to call him a friend at all, but the advice he gave him was financial. Trevor has been telling him, you should live like this. This is how you find peace. This is how things get better. And Joey just says, invest. Invest in this particular thing, And then we have Janelle swipes Joey from his agent. And that again, betrayal in Hollywood. And that's the kind of thing, Simon is not, he's at least trying to be more loyal to people he cares about. And yeah, by the end of the episode, very loyal, like going really above and beyond. But yeah, a lot of people in Hollywood are not, so it is this thing of like, does he want, is it good for Simon to still be in Hollywood, or did he fulfill what he really wanted? And that was also great in the flashback. I'm not just saying you're good at this, like how parents say their kids are good at things. I mean, you are gifted and you must share it with the world. And that's a wonderful way for him to phrase that, because that means it could apply also to the superpower. And that's the thing, like this could be this could function as, if they bring him back as a hero, this was his superhero origin story. He had to overcome his personal issues, and that's because that's the thing, like Simon Williams could do more for the world as a superhero than as an actor, though he is unbelievably talented as an actor. And yeah, so he goes to to talk to someone, and we don't really recognize him at all, but he says, okay, I guess if you insist on following me and just seeing how my days go and that sort of thing. And I really loved that for several minutes I genuinely wasn't sure if he or the episode was going somewhere with that, or if it was just acknowledging, hey, he does really need to get better at relating to people, at being in touch with regular people. And by the end he does. Like he didn't have to be so wonderful to Chuck, but he comes to care for him. Like it starts, that's the thing, he's taking a page out of Trevor's book. He is getting close to someone in order to accomplish something personal related to the DODC, so yeah, really, really wonderfully. I love that decision, and I'm so glad that they didn't, because there's several minutes there. There's maybe 5 minutes between him meeting Chuck and us seeing the building. Once he says, oh, I'll take you to work. That I was thinking there's something there, there's, but until then, yeah, those were my thoughts on what was going on there. And yeah, like that wasn't his initial idea. Like he was there for Trevor, but once he actually talked to people, listened to people, instead of focusing so much on his own stuff, like that actually, which, to be clear, I am not saying that that's like that black people don't listen to each other. I'm saying Hollywood people don't always pay attention to other people. Now I think that does. Yeah, I thought they struck a good balance with Chuck and his family of like, yeah, there's a couple of jokes, but it is also just kind of heartfelt. They could easily have made it like a big, laugh riot, but it pretty quickly settles into, no, this is just, he's talking to people and, trying to appreciate their problems. He's actually listening. Like, contrast him talking to Chuck. Like, when that was also, That hit me when he's talking about, oh yeah, like it was salmonella, but the doctors didn't know and they wouldn't give us antibiotics and it costs so much money to, I mean, he is describing medical debt, which is a huge problem. And I'm still not, I'm not forgiving Disney. I appreciate this is woke washing. They still need to treat their employees better, stand up more to Trump. But I do appreciate acknowledging, because, like, medical bankruptcy is a huge problem in America. And yeah, contrast the way, he's no longer actively napping. He is really listening and empathizing, and compare that to the act he put on to, make an impression on Kathy Friedman. The thing about the tires and the slush and that whole thing, and let's see. Yeah, like, for example, that little thing about, I just cooked what I normally would. Yeah, right. We haven't had pot roast since Grandma came to town. It's a joke. It's even an MCU style joke, but it's not like, you know, a really try hard, forced kind of thing. Like, it feels real. Like, this is how regular people sometimes behave when a celebrity is around, So, yeah. And let's see. I think that does get us to the but yeah, and Simon is standing there taking notes as the doctor is talking to him, and then, he's like, okay, it really would be good for you, Chuck, to move more. Like, don't worry about me, yeah, okay, normally I run faster and farther, whatever. We got to get you healthy, man, and that's, again, like, does that get him closer to breaking out Trevor? I don't think so. I in my opinion, that is very much him actually caring about this other person who, like, it's one thing that, him caring about Trevor, they were friends for a while, and there was the thing, he had to forgive Trevor for, but ultimately, whereas Chuck, like, it started with him treating Chuck as a means to an end, but now he sees him as an end in himself. And yeah, the I appreciate the thing about, you can't tell me the director, you can't tell me anything about this movie, I can't, there are rules, which, like, yeah, there are people who, I mean, he's essentially talking about, like, method acting almost, he's trying to live the same life as the person who, that's a thing, that is something, you can win an Oscar for that. So it sounds like the kind of thing, and it's also like, okay, so mainstream audiences now know Simon for Wonder Man, but, his Wikipedia almost definitely mentions he used to act on stage, so, like, it sounds like, okay, yeah, he's trying to get back in touch with his roots. He's doing this more, less commercial, more heartfelt kind of thing. Maybe Oscar baity, but, and yeah. So after a while, he's like, okay, tell you what, I fudged the system. I gave you a fake name. I'll get you to Jorg. And I like the little thing about, Alfonso. And it's like, well, I don't know. I'm not a Hollywood writer, okay? It's just, like, Chuck and his family are so authentic. They are the most authentic, real people on the show that are not related by blood to Simon. And I thought that really, really worked. And there at the end, yeah, he donated a lot of money so that Chuck would not have to have that job because it's burning him up inside, and no wonder. And that's, again, like, there are a number of people who just can't stand being, for example, prison guards and that sort of thing, because it is really draining. That is something that is an actual documented issue. And yeah, also just that little moment where, oh, so you're the new guy, Alfonso. Chuck's been showing me the ropes. Well, then you're screwed. That also felt like, just, yeah, that's the kind of, it's workplace humor, not this guy. I I hope Destin Daniel Cretton makes more MCU stuff, because I cannot put into words how excited I am for Spider-Man. Like I already was, but this even I'm so glad he's back to the MCU. It's yeah. But the yes, so the let's see, what was the other thing that I want? Yeah, so he asks about where the bathroom is, so that he'll have an excuse to they should probably just start teaching, like, if you're in a Hollywood movie and you're guarding or protecting someone or something, it should be part of the training. Hey, if someone asks you where the bathroom is, they're probably just looking for a way to break something or someone out. But yeah, so he goes up and finds Trevor, and yeah, Trevor saying, no, you're not supposed to, I'm accepting the consequences, which I did think it's one of those things. It's a great way to finish Trevor's arc. And I gotta say, I did not expect him to get an arc back when Iron Man 3 came out. I thought he was one and done, but yeah, over the course of 2 movies, a one shot, and now this show, he had an arc. And ultimately, yeah, it does mean that, is it perhaps slightly undermined by him being freed? An argument could be made. But at the end of the day, nighttime begins, and that can really help us realize, I really want Trevor to appear in more stuff, and there's a better in the MCU, and there's a better chance of that now that he is free. And it's also this thing of like, are they going to have to like square that with the DODC? Which again, like hypothetically, if Simon becomes an Avenger, yeah, that could help, get Trevor, and yeah, mean that Trevor doesn't have to, yeah. I mean, maybe they'll just have Trevor, like, maybe he's just like hanging out at the hideout and talking to someone else who's there, or maybe he gets kidnapped by the bad guys who are there for some kind of leverage, or maybe he does go on a mission or just calls them. Like, I don't know if he's qualified to be the guy in the chair, but yeah. And I love that Simon now has full control of his powers. Like clearly, emotionally, it is still like he really he got to a place where he could focus them, and yeah, part of it was that he got to live out his dream. He got to be Wonder Man. He got to deliver an amazing performance. If only his father could see the movie. Like this whole thing, his mom was always proud, but now his brother is as well. And yeah. And I believe the powers are consistent with the comic, but I have to admit it's been so long since I read something that had Wonder Man. But yeah, right. I also appreciated the part where there's again talk about like maybe the budget will be cut for the DODC, and the thing about powers, what was ionic powers, was also compelling. Yeah, I think that might pretty much cover I have to admit, it's been a while since I heard the actual song. That was also great, karaoke, and then he sings the song, and it's like, oh, I love that song, which, that is a fun way to distract. That did feel like a very typical MCU joke. But again, that entire section of the episode, and honestly the show overall, has not had so many that it was like obnoxious. And they're all on theme here. It's all like Hollywood, and the relationship between Trevor and Simon and such. But yeah, you know, it's not often I hear the song "Don't Let Your Babies Grow Up to Be Cowboys." I have, on the other hand, listened to the Weird Al song that references it quite a lot. Yeah, just genuinely really, really great. One of the best. I'll in my spoiler-free review, I'll put my ranking, but it's definitely, yeah, really, really solid MCU show. Yeah, I think that does cover the and I did also appreciate, so yeah, there at the end, the song that plays over some of the end credits is from Midnight Cowboy, which was how Trevor and Simon met, you know. And that's also a song where I can't hear that without thinking of the parody lyrics that MST3K did. Everybody's barking at me. I can't hear a command they're saying.